Shalom, everybody, from Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges, where history builds walls. And we're coming to the end of our series on the 6 C's of faith sharing. And I realized, looking at this 6th C of faith sharing, that there's a lot to say. So I'm going to have to do this in about 3 segments. Today's the first. Today I want to talk about community concerns, but about a particular aspect of community concerns, and that is communal respect. If we're going to build a community that is going to commend our Yeshua faith to Jewish people, we need to build a community that's characterized by a certain kind of respect that is sorely missing in our day. So let me show you just a passage of Scripture that informs our discussion for today. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10:32, "Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks," in this context it's worshippers of false gods, "or the community of Yeshua believers." Some translations say the Church of God, but that sounds very culturally overladen. So let's look at it this way. Do not cause anyone to stumble. That is, Jews, Greeks, or worshippers of false gods, or the community of Yeshua believers. And I am suggesting to you today that as we seek to build communities that are appropriate to attract and to hold the attention of Jewish people, we need to have communities that pay attention to what the Apostle Paul said here. Let me explain how that's not happening. First of all, stumbling blocks to Jews. I still see things from certain agencies that are even involved in reaching out to Jewish people that express a profound disrespect for Jewish life, for the rabbis, for the religion of the rabbis. You name it, there's a certain disdain, a certain contempt, a certain condescension towards Judaism and Jews. I could show you a number of quotations, but we don't have time for all of that. If you need that, you let me know and I'll give you the evidence. But I've seen it, I saw it again this week in a newsletter which made the rabbis to be the bad guys. Well, I got news for you. You're not going to commend yourself to Jewish people if you're making the cultural heroes of the Jewish people to be the bad guys. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you this. It wasn't, it wasn't the ministers that kept the Jews alive during our dispersion in Europe, during the pogroms, during the Crusades, during the Holocaust. It wasn't the ministers that kept us alive. It was the rabbis. They deserve respect, and Judaism deserves respect. We should not cause a stumbling block to the Jewish people. Many times we have the habit of building the case for Yeshua on the wreckage of a dismantled Judaism. We have to make Judaism look bad in order to make Yeshua look good. This is wrong. This comes from Justin Martyr in the 2nd century, and Yeshua believers have been echoing his tune for 2,000 years. It's wrong. Do not cause anyone to stumble. Don't cause an offense. Don't be disrespectful to Jews in your community. Don't allow it. Secondly, Greeks, or worshippers of false gods. You know, a lot of the rhetoric that goes on nowadays about Muslims, for example, you may feel you're entitled to that kind of rhetoric, and a lot of it is hysterical. It overgeneralizes. I live in Altadena, California right now. I live about a mile south of where a man named Dudley Woodbury used to live. Dudley Woodbury is arguably the world's premier Christian expert on Islam. He was the first Christian pastor in Saudi Arabia since the time of Muhammad. And he also served in Pakistan and in Afghanistan, as well as Saudi Arabia. And he knows Islam backwards and forwards. And he knows enough about Islam to know that there are very many shades of Islam. And yet people who are involved in Muslim bashing have these ham-fisted generalizations. Well, you're entitled to be as ham-fisted generalizing as you wish, but don't be surprised if sophisticated Jewish people don't think you're a bigot. Paul says, don't give any offense, even to worshippers of false gods. If you consider Islam to be the worship of false gods, that's your right. But you're not entitled to show disrespect. Not if you pay attention to Paul. He says, don't cause anyone to stumble, either Jews or worshippers of false gods. When Paul goes to Athens, look at Acts chapter 17. It says he's convulsed, he's nauseated by the idolatry in Athens. Yet when he speaks to the Athenians, he's full of respect. He quotes from 3 pagan poets, and he commends them for an altar they have, a pagan altar they have, to an unknown god. He's dripping with respect. We should be too. Oh, don't be surprised if Jewish people don't consider us to be a little small-minded clique of narrow fundamentalists. And that's not going to attract anybody but other narrow fundamentalists. Finally, don't be disrespectful. Don't cause a stumbling block to the community of Yeshua believers. There are communities that call themselves Messianic communities nowadays that have no respect for the church. They say, oh, the church, they don't celebrate the feast, they don't keep the seventh-day Sabbath, they don't keep the law. And it grieves me to tell you this, because you might not think it's true, but it's true. This is not true of the core communities of respectable Messianic Judaism. But as you get towards the periphery, there's all kinds of strangeness out there, all kinds of condescension, all kinds of disrespect for the church. People disrespect things they don't even begin to understand. I remember someone telling me that Mother Teresa is not a Christian. I encourage you to read Mother Teresa's book called Come Be My Light. After about 25 pages, you're going to drop the book, because the book is so hot with holiness that you can't hold it. Her devotion to Yeshua was something which should make us all ashamed. But many of us have been affected by all kinds of sectarian mudslinging. And so we have disrespect for the church in general. We may have disrespect for particular expressions of Yeshua faith, and we should cut it out, because Jewish people are very sensitive to bigotry. Jewish people, other than those who have been socialized in certain wings of the Messianic movement, Jewish people are tolerant, and they value tolerance. And Paul the Apostle, who must have been, a little questionable, because look what he says. He says, don't cause anyone to stumble. Not the Jews, not the idol worshippers, not the people in the church, not the community of Yeshua believers. Can we form communities that are respectful to all these groups? Can we? As a matter of fact, will we? And I'll tell you, we must. So, you think about that. Send me your nasty letters. It's okay. I can stand it. Thank you very much from Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges instead of walls. Shalom for now.